So, students, now we are going to start a chapter that is principles of inheritance and variations. Principles of inheritance and variations. So, name of the topic is principles of inheritance and variations. And this is the topic for this principles of inheritance and variation. And let me tell what is inheritance first. What is inheritance? With an example, that the father is the father who is tall. Imagine that the father is tall and black. Father is tall and black. And mother is comparatively short but white. She is short and white. A tall and black a tall and black person, happens to marry a woman who is short and white. And they have given birth to, for example, 4 children. They have given birth to 4 children. And one child happens to be tall and black. The other child, short and white. And the third child, tall and white. And the fourth child is short and black. I will repeat, a man who is tall and black, happens to marry a woman who is short and white. They have given birth to 4 children. One child happens to be tall and black. The second child happens to be short and white. The third child is tall and white. And the fourth child is short and black. In this particular example, we have selected 2 characters. What are the 2 characters? One character is the height and the other character is color. We have selected 2 characters. One is height and color. If you observe the progeny, this is the progeny or offspring or progeny. One child resembles the father. He resembles the father in both height and color. The second child resembles the mother in both height and color, short and white as that of mother. Then what about the third and fourth child? The third child in this particular case resembles father in height and mother in color. You observe this. The third child resembles father in height. The third child is tall as that of father and white as that of mother. So the third child resembles father in height and mother in color. Whereas the fourth child resembles mother in height, short as that of mother and black as that of father. That means the characters are transmitted from parents to offspring, parents to progeny, from one generation to the next generation. This transfer of characters from one generation to the next generation or from parents to the progeny is called inheritance. So let me define what is inheritance. Inheritance is the transfer of characters. The transfer of characters from parents to the offspring or progeny to the offspring is inheritance. This inheritance. So from this we have understood that the characters, that is height and color. Height and color are the characters. If I say tall and short, they are called the trait. The trait is different and the character is different. A trait speaks about the contrasting features, that is opposite features of a character. If I say tall, short is the trait of tall. And similarly, white, black, they are the traits. Tall and the height and color, they are the characters. They are the characters. So the transfer of characters from parents to offspring is inheritance. This inheritance is also called heredity. Inheritance is otherwise called heredity. The other name of inheritance is heredity. Now observe the offspring, progeny. One child is tall and black, and the other child is short and white. The third child is tall and white, and the fourth child is short and black. That means one child differs from the other child, either in color or in height or in both. That means the progeny born to the same parents are not exactly similar. They show differences. The differences among the individuals are called variations. Now the title is justified. The principles of inheritance. We have defined what is inheritance, and now we are going to define what are variations. What are variations? The differences among the individuals. Among the individuals or among the progeny are called variations. So let me define what are variations. The differences among the individuals. Among the individuals are called variations. They are called variations. So the differences among the individuals are called the variations. Now let us examine the progeny once again. Let us examine the progeny once again. One child, the first child, is tall and black. The first child get the character of height and color from the father. That means the characters are as such transmitted. When the characters are as such transmitted from the parents, maybe father or mother, then it is a non-recombinant. So in the progeny, the child one resembles father in both height, and color. Therefore, child 1 is recombinant, non-recombinant. That means without any recombination of characters. He is a non-recombinant. Similarly, child 2 resembles mother. Child 2 resembles mother because she takes the height of the mother and also the complexion or color of the mother. Therefore, in the progeny obtained, the first two children happens to be non-recombinants. They are non-recombinants. Non-recombinants. And what about the child 3 and child 4? The child 3, if you observe the child 3 gets the height of the father and the color of the mother. That means the child 3 shares the character of height from the father and color from the mother, and similarly the child 4. Therefore, the child 3 and the child 4 in this particular case, they are called recombinants. Recombinants. So, we have come across two words, one is non-recombinants and the other is recombinants. That means, when we examine the progeny of any individual, maybe a plant, or it may be animal, or it may be a human being. If you observe the progeny, some progeny resemble the parents as that of a Xerox copy. As that of a Xerox copy, they are non-recombinants. And some of the progeny, they show a little bit variations. They are called recombinants. So we can notice both non-recombinants and recombinants in a progeny. So we have understood what is inheritance and what is the other name of inheritance and what are variations. Now, what is genetics? Genetics is the branch of science which deals with the study of inheritance and variations. Therefore, what is genetics? Genetics is the study of inheritance and variations. It is the study of inheritance and variations. It is a branch of science which deals with the study of inheritance and variations. And who is the scientist that coined the term genetics? The term genetics, it was coined by Bateson. It is Bateson who coined the term genetics. Bateson coined the term genetics. He coined the term genetics. The term genetics was coined by Bateson. Remember, it is a Bateson who coined the term genetics. And who is considered as the father of genetics? That is the second question. The father of genetics is Gregor Johann Mendel, G.J. Mendel. He is called father of genetics. Father of genetics is G.J. Mendel, Gregor Johann Mendel. And in fact, this Mendel is an Austrian monk and he had a profound knowledge of statistics. Though he was working as a father in a church, he took a lot of interest in statistics and also in the observation of nature. And in the churchyard, he was very much fascinated by a garden pea plant. This turned the world of Mendel. It created a new history. And this man, Mendel, was very much fascinated by the garden pea plant that is grown in the churchyard. And this pea plant is responsible for unraveling the laws of genetics. Therefore, this pea plant, garden pea plant, is called mother of genetics. So, father of genetics is Richard Johann Mendel, G.J. Mendel, whereas mother of genetics is garden pea plant, which drew the attention of Mendel. So, mother of genetics is garden pea plant. Mother of genetics is garden pea plant. Okay. So, mother of genetics, I said mother of genetics is a garden pea plant. And the scientific name of garden pea plant is Pison sativa. The scientific name. The scientific name of garden pea plant. Garden pea is Pison sativum. This pea plant, Pison sativum, it belongs to family Fabaceae. Belongs to family Fabaceae. And this Pison sativum, it shows 7 pairs of contrasting characters, and it is the plant with 7 pairs of chromosomes. So the number of chromosomes in Pison sativum is 7 pairs. The number of chromosomes in garden pea plant, that is in Pison sativum, garden pea is 7 pairs of 14 chromosomes. Has 7 pairs of chromosomes. And Mendel, he selected garden pea for his experiment. Then what are the reasons for choosing this pea plant for his experiment? Now we try to explore this. So, reasons for selecting pea plant by Mendel. What are the reasons for selecting pea plant? What are the reasons for selecting garden pea plant by Mendel for his experiment that we are going to discuss? One reason is it is easily cultivable. That is one reason. So the first and foremost reason is it is easily cultivable. It can be cultivated very easily. It is easily cultivable. Second is it is cultivable in minimal space and in little time. That is the second reason. It is or it can be cultivated in minimum space. Minimum space and time. That means it can be drawn very easily. There is a second reason for selecting this for selecting this plant. And third reason is this pea plant, garden pea plant, completes its life cycle in a short span. This is the third reason. It completes its life cycle in a short span, in a short way. Then what is the advantage? If it completes the life cycle in a short span means more generations can distribute. A scientist can never come to a conclusion based on his observation for one or two generations. To conclude a fact, to conclude findings from the experiment, the scientists need to study so many generations. It is possible only when the plant is a short-lived plant or ephemeral, or when it completes its life cycle in one season, or it should be annual. And the advantage of this cotton pea plant is it completes its life cycle in a short period. So this gives scope for the studying number of generations to conclude the fact, to conclude his observation. So the third reason is it completes its life cycle in a short span. This enables Mendel study the number of generations. The number of generations. This enables Mendel study the number of generations. That is the third reason. Then fourth reason is this garden pea plant. It has a bisexual flowers. Flowers are bisexual. Bisexual in the sense a flower has both androecium and gynoecium. So flowers are bisexual. Flowers are bisexual and self-pollination is possible. So in this garden pea plant, flowers are bisexual and self-pollination is possible. Then what is the advantage? If self-pollination is possible, then pure line characters can be studied. Pure line characters. That means whatever characters that are present in the parents are as such transmitted to the offspring. That is a pure line characters. So it is possible only when the pollination is a self-pollination. So as the flowers are bisexual and self-pollination is possible, this enables, this helps Mendel study the pure line characters. So this enables Mendel study the characters. That is the fourth reason for choosing this and the advantage that he derives. And fifth. Then what is the fifth reason? I said the flowers are bisexual. Though the flowers are bisexual, cross pollination can easily be done in this plant. Cross pollination can easily be done. How? In what way? Cross pollination in this bisexual flower can easily be done by removing its stamens. What is the removal of stamens called? The removal of stamens is called emasculation. Emasculation. It is the removal of stamens or its anthers from the floral bud is called emasculation. If stamens or its anthers are removed, then the pollen grains will not reach the stigma of the same flower, so that self-pollination is prevented. When self-pollination is prevented, we have given the scope for cross-pollination. So, the other advantage of this plant is cross-pollination can easily be done. When cross-pollination can easily be done, what is the advantage? The advantage is we can study hybrid characters or recombinant characters also. Hybrid characters or recombinant characters also. Earlier I said, if we observe the progeny, that is the children born to the parents, they show differences, and some children are exactly alike. They resemble the parents, they are non-recombinants, and some children, they are recombinants, sharing the character of both the parents. That means by cross pollination, if cross pollination is allowed, we can study hybrid characters also. So that is the other advantage that Mendel took by choosing cotton pea plant for his experiment. Therefore, the fifth reason is, though flowers are bisexual, self cross-pollination can easily be done. Cross-pollination can easily be done, and this enables Mendel to study the hybrid characters. This enables Mendel study the hybrid characters or recombinant characters. Characters also. So these are the reasons for selecting this pea plant for his experiment. So the scientific name of cotton pea is Pisum sativum. It belongs to family Fabaceae. And second, the number of chromosomes in cotton pea is 7 pairs. And what are the reasons for selecting cotton pea for the experiment by Mendel is? You should remember these 5 important reasons. And these reasons all form the foundation for his success. So the success of Mendel depends on the reasons, his reasons. I said already that he was a great mathematician. Was a great mathematician. He was a great mathematician with a profound knowledge of statistics. And unfortunately, Mendel did not know anything about the gene. He did not know the gene at all. He did not know gene at all. But he said some factor is responsible for the transmission of character. It is called factor hypothesis. So according to Mendel, a gene is a factor. He did not know anything about the gene. He did not speak about the gene, remember. He did not speak about the gene. He said some factor is responsible for the transmission of characters. So according to Mendel, a gene is a factor. A gene is a factor. Then later on, a person by name, a scientist, a theorist, by name Johansson, he coined the term gene. So the term genetics by Benson, the term gene was coined by Johansson. And Mendel did not know anything about the gene. Therefore, he said, some factor is responsible for the transmission of characters. So, according to Mendel, a gene is a factor. And this factor is later identified as gene by Johansson. I hope you have understood. And another important point regarding Mendel is he did not select all the characters at a time. Though he observed 7 pairs of contrasting characters in the tree plant, he did not select all the 7 characters at a time and never tried to complicate the experiment. First, he selected only 1 pair of contrasting characters, made a cross, called the cross as a monohybrid cross, did the experiment, and he noted the results of the experiment, subjected the results of the experiment to the statistical analysis, and recorded the results of his experiments. That is more important. That means he never wants to make the things so complicated. He wants to make the things easier so that we can understand the mechanism of inheritance. First, he has chosen only 1 pair of contrasting character, did a cross, called the monohybrid cross, and based on the results of the cross, he proposed law of dominance and law of segregation too. And later on, he did a dihybrid cross, that is, a cross made between 2 parental plants, taking into consideration 2 pairs of contrasting characters. Then the dihybrid cross, again, he made a record of the results of his experiments, then subjected the results to statistical analysis, and based on the dihybrid cross, and he proposed a law called the law of independent assortment. What I mean to say is, Mendel never made across taking all the 7 pairs of contrasting characters at a time. So he chose the first 1 pair of contrasting characters, then the second pair of contrasting characters, and got the results of the experiment, analyzed the experiment, subjected the results to statistical analysis, and recorded the results of his experiments. So that was the main reason for the success of Gregor Johann Mendel. So we have studied the results for selecting garden pea plant. And Mendel did not know anything about the gene. He called the gene a factor. So according to Mendel, gene is a factor. Gene is a factor. It is a factor. So he did not know anything about the gene. Gene is a factor. A factor is responsible for the transmission of characters. Later on, this factor is identified as gene. The factor is later on identified as gene. Identified as gene by Johansson. So the term gene was coined by Johansson. The term gene was coined by Johansson. So according to Mendel, a factor refers to gene. And according to Johansson, a gene refers to a factor. So Mendel did not know anything about gene. He called the gene a factor, whereas the factor is later on identified as a gene by Johansson. Therefore, the term gene was coined by Johansson. The term gene was coined by Johansson. Then third, and this Mendel, he cultivated and selected nearly 29,000 pea plants. He cultivated and selected 29,000 pea plants for his experiments and published a paper in the year 1865. The title of the paper is the paper published by Mendel in 1865 is Experiments in Plant Hybridization. So, Mendel he cultivated and selected about 29,000 garden pea plants and published a paper in the year 1865 entitled Experiments in Plant Hybridization. And later on, based on the results obtained, Mendel proposed Mendelian laws. Mendelian laws are principles of inheritance, and these Mendelian laws are principles of inheritance. Mendelian laws or principles of inheritance. Principles of inheritance. They were published in a journal. Published in a journal. In a journal. The name of the journal is The Proceedings of Natural History Society of Brunn. This is the name of the journal. So, this man Mendel, he published the results of his experiments in a journal by name The Proceedings of Natural History Society of Brunn in the year 1866. So, who proposed the principles of inheritance or laws of inheritance means it is again Mendel. So, Mendel proposed the laws of inheritance or the principles of inheritance. And what are the laws of inheritance proposed by Mendel? The Mendelian laws are: one is the law of dominance. This is one law. And second is law of segregation. Segregation. This law of segregation is also called law of purity of gametes. Law of purity of gametes. This is the second. Then the other law is law of independent assortment. Independent assortment. And these are the Mendelian laws or Mendelian principles. One is the law of dominance, second law of dominance, law of segregation, and law of independent assortment. But remember, this is a very, very important point that you have to understand, realize, and remember. If a question is asked, it is the first law of Mendel means. You should say law of segregation. Law of segregation is the first law of Mendel. Whereas the law of independent assortment is the second law of Mendel. That means the principle of dominance or the law of dominance, it is seen in monohybrid class, which results in the proposal of the law of segregation. And the law of dominance is also seen during dihybrid class, which results in the proposal of law of independent assortment. Remember, Mendel, based on monohybrid class, based on the results of monohybrid class, proposed the law of segregation, otherwise called law of purity of gametes. And based on the results of dihybrid class, Mendel proposed law of independent assortment. In both the cases, in monohybrid class and dihybrid class, in both the cases, the principle of dominance is involved. That's why the principle of dominance is considered as a common law. Common law. Therefore, the first law of genetics is the law of segregation, whereas the second law of genetics is the law of independent assortment. So I hope you have understood the laws proposed by Mendel or law of predominance, a basic law, and the first law is the law of segregation or law of purity of gametes, and the second law of genetics is, or the second law of Mendel is law of independent assortment. And these laws were published in the year 1866. And unfortunately, the Mendelian laws were unknown to the world till 1900. That means almost more than 3 decades, more than 30 years, they were not known to the world. And in the year 1900, 3 scientists independently rediscovered the Mendelian laws. They independently rediscovered the Mendelian laws. One is the Hugo de Vries, the second is Correns, and the third is Sherman. These were the 3 scientists who independently rediscovered the Mendelian laws in the year 1900. So try to remember, though Mendel published the results of his experiments and also the laws of inheritance in the journal Proceedings of Natural History of Society of London in 1866. I'm sorry, in 1866. They were unnoticed to the world till 1900. So Mendelian laws were rediscovered in 1900. So in 1900, Mendelian laws, Mendelian laws were rediscovered. They were rediscovered by Hugo de Vries, Collins, and Sharma. So these 3 personalities, Hugo de Vries, Collins, and Sharma, they were called the rediscoverers of Mendelian laws or Mendelism. This is one of the important areas for objective question. Who among the following is not a rediscoverer of Mendelism? Who among the following is not a rediscoverer of Mendelian laws? Option 1 is Sherman, option 2 is Correns, option 3 is Hugo de Vries, and option 4 is Peterson. If the choice is set in such a way, the answer is Peterson. So Peterson has no place as a rediscoverer of Mendelism. It is only Hugo de Vries, Correns, and Sharma who independently rediscovered the Mendelian laws. And Hugo de Vries of Holland belongs to Holland. He belongs to Holland, and Correns of Germany and Sharma of Austria. So Hugo de Vries of Holland, Correns of Germany, and Sharma of Austria, they independently rediscovered the principles of Mendel or laws of inheritance. Now, once again, we are going to discuss another important objective type of question. This objective type of question happens to be difficult if you do not provided the information. The difficulty arises only when we are not provided with information. For example, if a question is asked in NEET examination, anything is possible. Anything is possible. If a question is asked in NEET examination, the scientist who discovered the Mendelian laws is Hugo de Vries. He belongs to like that they ask. The scientist who discovered the Mendelian laws, one of the scientists who discovered the Mendelian laws is Hugo de Vries. He belongs to Austria, England, then Holland, then Germany. Means you have to give the answer Holland. Because in one of the NEET examination, the question is asked to which country the Punnett belongs. Punnett is one of the persons who designed the checkerboard in genetics. The checkerboard is used to represent the results or the combinations. That Punnett belongs to England. That question was asked in NEET examination. So there is every possibility of asking such types of questions. So you must remember also the Hugo de Vries of Holland, then Cornels of Germany, and Sherlock of Austria. They independently rediscovered the Mendelian laws in 1900. That means the Mendelian laws came to limelight in the year 1900 due to the efforts of these three scientists, Hugo de Vries, Correns, and Sherman. Now let me uh, define what are the different terms used in genetics. We should have at least a basic knowledge of different terms or terminology used in genetics. Then what are the different terms that we are going to learn in the field of this genetics? One is an allele or allele. Allele. And second, homologous chromosomes. Homologous chromosomes. Then what is dominance What is recessive? So again, homologous chromosomes, dominance, recessive, dominance, recessive. First, we try to understand that these are four terminology. Later on, we will add on some more terms. The a profound knowledge of this terminology is useful to uh, understand the subject of genetics in a easier way. So you should have a thorough knowledge with this terminology. Now let me define first what are these homologous chromosomes. Homologous chromosomes. Suppose this is a chromosome. Imagine this is a chromosome. This is a chromosome. This is a one chromosome and this is another chromosome. Now watch this. These are the two chromosomes. Chromosome 1, 2. These are two chromosomes. Now take another set of chromosomes. This is one chromosome. And this is another chromosome. Now watch the diagrams very carefully. This is one pair of chromosomes. And these are the other pairs of chromosomes. Now observe the first pair of chromosomes. If you observe the first pair of chromosomes, this is the centromere of chromosome. Centromere. The centromere of the chromosome is placed at the center. In both the cases, the centromere is placed at the center. Therefore, the chromosomes are metacentric chromosomes. Metacentric. The chromosomes which are morphologically similar, which are structurally similar, they are called homologous chromosomes. So, if you observe this particular case, is this case, what are homologous chromosomes? Chromosomes which are morphologically similar. Morphologically means structurally. In both the cases, we have noticed the centromere at the center, that is the metacentric nature. Morphologically similar. Chromosomes which are morphologically similar are called homologous chromosomes. So these are homologous. Now observe the second set of chromosomes. If you observe the second set of chromosomes, observe the second set of chromosomes. In the second set of chromosomes, one chromosome has a centromere at the center, whereas the other chromosome The centromere is a sub-terminal below the terminal. Below the terminal. So one is metacentric chromosome, and the other type of chromosome is acrocentric chromosome. That means the two chromosomes are morphologically dissimilar. I hope you have understood. In this case, the two chromosomes are morphologically similar, therefore they are homologous chromosomes. In this particular case, the two chromosomes are morphologically dissimilar. So one with heterocentric and the other with acrocentric, or sometimes with the telocentric chromosomes, or with acentric or submetacentric. That means chromosomes which are morphologically and structurally morphologically dissimilar are called non-homologous chromosomes. Non-homologous. There is no such word like heterologous, remember. Non-homologous chromosomes. So first we should have what are homologous chromosomes and what are non-homologous chromosomes. So homologous chromosomes are chromosomes which are morphologically similar. Chromosomes which are morphologically similar are called homologous chromosomes, and chromosomes which are morphologically dissimilar are called non-homologous chromosomes. So we first try to get the idea of homologous and non-homologous chromosomes, because these are the terms which are frequently used in genetics. So we should thorough with the terminology that are frequently used in genetics, homologous and non-homologous chromosomes. I hope you have understood. Then, when you examine a chromosome has a centromere. This is the centromere of a chromosome. This is the centromere of a chromosome. On either side of the centromere of a chromosome, there are disc-shaped structures. There are two disc-shaped structures. And each disc-shaped structure is called a kinetochore. So a chromosome has a centromere, and a chromosome on either side of the centromere has a disc-shaped kinetochores. There are two kinetochores and one centromere. And a chromosome has arms. These are the arms of a chromosome. And these arms of a chromosome are called chromatids. These are chromatids. Each arm is called chromatid. Now this is the chromatid of a chromosome. Each arm of a chromosome is called chromatid. And on the chromatid, factors are arranged. What are arranged on the chromatid means factors. Factors are arranged on the chromatid. And what are those factors? Genes. So you can notice the arrangement of genes on the chromatid of a chromosome. These are the genes arranged on the chromatid of a chromosome. How are these genes arranged? The genes are arranged in a linear fashion. And the point at which the gene is located on the chromosome is called locus. So what is the locus? Locus is the point or the region, is the point at which the gene is located. So locus is the point at which the gene is located. That means the chromatid of a chromosome accommodates so many genes. Therefore, there are so many loci. Loci is a plural of locus. Locus refers to a single gene, whereas a loci refers to many genes. Loci are many points, and each point with a gene. Therefore, a locus is the point at which the gene is located on the chromosome, and these loci, now they are called loci, many points are loci. These loci are arranged, or genes are arranged in a linear fashion, in a linear order upon the chromosome. Whenever a gene is transmitted, means the chromosome is transmitted. If the chromosome is transmitted, the gene is also transmitted. Like that of existence of south and north poles in a magnet. We cannot isolate the south and north poles of a magnet. So also, we cannot imagine the transmission of genes without the transmission of the chromosomes. Therefore, when the chromosomes are transmitted from parents to offspring or progeny, the genes present on the chromosome are also get transmitted. This is called the chromosomal theory of inheritance. So the chromosomal theory of inheritance states that the chromosomes are the vehicles of heredity or inheritance. They are called the vehicles of heredity or inheritance, and this chromosomal theory of inheritance was proposed by Satan and Baveri. The chromosomal theory of inheritance. The chromosomal theory of inheritance was proposed by Satan and Baveri. Satan and Baveri. Satan and Baveri proposed the chromosomal theory of inheritance, which means that when the chromosomes are transmitted from parents to offspring, the genes are also get transmitted. It is the chromosomal theory of inheritance proposed by Satan and Baveri, but the experimental evidence for this was by Morgan, experimentally proved by Morgan. And this question was asked in the very recent NEET examination, and most of the students they have ignored the second point. The question is experimental proof of the chromosomal theory of inheritance was given by, and unfortunately, most of the students have chosen the answer Satan and Baveri, but it is not Satan and Baveri, it is Morgan. So the experimental proof of the chromosomal theory of inheritance was by Morgan, and it was proposed by Satan and Baveri. So what is a locus? A locus is the point at which a gene is located. A chromosome on its chromatid has many loci. That you have to know.